You are now listening to the Build a Brain podcast with Dr. Jeanne Zehr. Join the quest to shape an efficient brain that fires on all cylinders and runs like a fine-tuned machine. You are now in the capable hands of an international presenter and a pathologically optimistic brain builder. Dr. Zehr will give you the right blocks to build that 3 pounds of cerebral muscle for you, your child, or the young adult you teach or mentor. Block by block, thought by thought, now is the time to build a better brain. Let's get started.
It is episode 19, my friends. Welcome to Build a Brain. I know Kibwe and I got a little bit behind. We have both had a lot of stuff going on in our lives, and so we got behind a little bit with recording. So Teo in Romania, this one is for you. So this is episode number 19. And it is about conserving constancies, just a really cool cognitive function. So, Kibwe, when you think about the word conserve, what comes to mind?
To save, to savor, to ration out.
Excellent, excellent. So to ration out, savor, to keep, to save, yes. Now think of the word constancy. What does that word mean to you?
So that makes me think of consistency or consistent.
There you go.
I'm not
Simple
sure.
word.
Simple, more simple?
Yeah, more simple. You're just keeping things the
Constant.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just means constant. My simple word is the same. Yeah, I wanted to go that simple. So keeping things the same, saving things, conserving constancies. So a question that we could consider for this cognitive function is, what makes a square a square? Well, it has to have 4 equal sides and 4 right angles, and it has some other characteristics like 2 sets of parallel sides. But if you visualize that square in your mind right now, and now you color it blue. That's the only difference. It's just blue. Well, we've changed something, but in your mind, Kibwe, is it still a square?
I guess it is. Because none of the shapes or the sides have changed, just the colors. So
Good thinking.
Yes,
I love how you
square.
thought through that. Excellent. Excellent thinking. At first, we think, wait a minute, not the same square ring. Well, it is a different color, but it still qualifies as a square because we have kept the same, the attributes or the characteristics of any square, 4 equal sides, 4 right angles. So we're good to go. We conserve the constancy. Well, this is really important for a little guy to learn, or a little girl when they're 3 or 4 years old. But think about when they get into algebra. Think about some of those math classes that you had in high school and college, and you had to go back and pull on the knowledge that you had in elementary sometimes even. So you got to hold on and keep what stays the constant. I had a long conversation with a mom just last week who's so concerned. Her daughter gets tutored and works so hard on her math, and the next day she'll try to do the same assignment again, and it's like she's completely forgotten everything she learned the day before.
Wow.
So we want to say, oh, it's a memory issue. It may be, because I haven't met with this girl yet to really tease it out, but it may be that she needs to develop the cognitive function of conserving constancies, of being able to see what does stay the same and what changes.
Okay.
So this could really come into play in our adult life. Think about, you're going to make a big move in your life. I don't know, can we tell people where you're moving to?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm
The
moving
young
to
man is heading
Colorado.
west.
That's
Denver,
right.
Colorado.
That's right.
He is going west, and he's not going to be a cowboy. He
No,
is going to
ma'am.
continue being an amazing audio engineer
Yep.
for a public radio station, right?
Yep. For a
Oh my word.
for a podcast network in Colorado.
There you go. A podcast network. I mean, yeah. Anyway, so cool. So let's think about you, Kibwe. Grew up in, was it Gary?
Yes,
Grew up
ma'am.
in Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana.
Then you spent several years here in Fort Wayne. I thought we were going to keep you here, but no, Denver found you. So it's so awesome. When you moved to Denver, are you going to be the same Kibwe Cooper, basically, that you were in Fort Wayne?
From a character level, yes. But I'll be a different color, so to speak. Because I'll have a different flavoring, a different surrounding that will impact the way that same square looks.
I love it. Great analogy. So yes, there's going to be things that change, but who Kibwe is? Because you're still going to make my podcast, because it doesn't matter where you or I are in the world, because we can do this work virtually. So we can conserve the constancy of our friendship, of our working relationship, and of you being who you are. Even though subtle changes can happen. Think about what happens when we have a loved one that gets very ill and they go through so many dramatic changes because they're so sick. But yet they're still the person you love, and that doesn't change. So this is a pretty important cognitive strategy. And here's how you can develop it with children or even teenagers in your life is you want to do a lot of work with clay and art and music, which happens to be your field. So think about with music how the same melody you will recognize whether it's on a guitar or it's on a piano or someone is singing it, because we conserved the constancy of the sequence of those notes. So we can recognize the melody.
Okay.
So work on that with children. And then clay. When you take, it's so fun with little kids because till they're about 5 or 6, they don't get this. So you have 2 balls of clay and they're about the same size. And you say, are these the same amount of clay? And of course, a 4-year-old, 5, 6-year-old's going to say, yep, same amount. And I'll say, okay, watch. And you take one of the balls of clay and flatten it down to make like a hamburger patty, right? And then you pick up the ball again and say, now, are the clay, the 2 pieces of clay, are they the same amount or different? And a young child will really struggle with that question. They'll say, no, it's different now. They'll think there's more in the original big round ball because it's taller. They think height, is going to mean more. They don't understand. They even watched you do it, that it's the same ball, and they will so say, interesting. I see what you're thinking. Don't tell them they're wrong. Just say, I understand. Okay, watch again, and then turn it back into a ball and do the other one and flatten it, and keep asking the question until they get it. And I've done this with kids, and you watch the light bulb come on and they suddenly go, oh, I get it. They're the same. They're just a different shape. Yes.
That's really interesting. Does this show up a lot when it comes to kids with word problems? When people change one word or change a small descriptor in the sentence, but they haven't changed any of the other elements? That used to really throw me off a lot when I was a kid. And so when you're saying this, it makes me think about that, how confused I used to get because they've now changed a descriptor. And now I think that change means the whole equation is different.
Yes.
Is that what's happening with kids when they're doing that?
Yeah, you've got to decide what changes can happen that it changes everything. because a greater than sign changed to a less than sign. You remember the alligator mouths,
Yep.
Yeah, that's a big difference when those change.
Right.
But in a word problem like you're talking about in math, every word you go from one word problem to the next word problem, and everything's different. I have different words, I have different symbols, I have different numbers, and so I have to put all this information together. Now that's getting into a whole bunch of cognitive functions when you get into math story problems. Think about reading, when you discovered, because you grew up with computers, Kibwe. So did you ever play around with different fonts?
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that fun?
Yeah.
It's so creative. And so the letter A can look dramatically different in Chancery compared to Arial, compared to chalkboard, compared to Times Roman. You have hundreds of fonts, and yet every one of those is the letter A. So you just have to recognize it in its new font. Well, think about, did you get to learn cursive writing when you went into third grade?
I tried to learn cursive writing. I was not very good at it. And so my mom switched me over to italic.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So a lot of kids try the cursive and they go back to printing. I think it's because it's what we learned first. And so now we have a lot of children in our schools aren't taught any cursive at all because we assume, well, they're just going to be typing on a keyboard anyway. We don't have to have cursive. But in the old days, when I was a child, I had to figure out think about, I don't know if you remember, a cursive B is a loop with a little hook on the side. Well, that looks a whole lot different than a B that's just a stick and a ball.
Yeah.
So cursive letters, you are conserving the name of the letter, its label, even though its shape has dramatically changed. So what stays the same and what changes is what the conservation of constancy is about, is understanding the attributes that keep that object or idea or word or melody, what keeps it the same, and what changes. If there is another kind of change, oh, well, now it is not a square anymore. Because as soon as I take a square and stretch it, it's now become a parallelogram or a rhombus or a diamond shape. So all it takes is some certain changes, and we have not conserved the constancy of the characteristics. What do you think about that one? Interesting.
That's very interesting, and I can see how anxious that could potentially make kids because, when you're learning things, it's always a right or wrong answer. And so you can be very worried about whether if something changes, that throws off everything you knew about the equation or the scenario, whatever it is. So I think that's really, really interesting. Can you give us another example of how you can demonstrate or help children evaluate what is going to change the whole scenario versus what is just a non-critical change?
Yeah. I talked about clay, and remember music, teaching children music so that they are getting that auditory experience of hearing subtle differences and what stays the same. Playing with water and experimenting with water is really valuable too, as you pour it back and forth between a tall, skinny beaker and a short beaker. They may be the very same volume, a bit like the clay. Conserving the constancy of volume is more abstract and a little more difficult for children, so worth playing around with kiddos. And then the questions that you ask, and these will all be and you can download this off. Let's see, we've got it on the website, don't we? It's on the mind-cap.org website. If you go to podcast, you can go to the bottom and you can download and print for yourself all of these questions I'm going to give you right now. So you might ask, And this could be a young adult you're mentoring. You could ask yourself these questions. Okay, how are things different? And how are things the same? So what's the same here? So when you move into your new house or your new apartment in Denver, you're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to put the silverware drawer to the right of the sink like it was at home? Or do I want to change it up? And so you got a lot of decisions when you move homes. That do I want something so fresh and new that my brain is challenged? Or do I have enough challenges in life so I want to conserve the constancy of, no, I don't want to worry about where the silverware is. I'm going to put it to the right of the sink. Okay. So how can things change? How can things stay the same? And when you're making a choice, and this could be what shirt to buy at the store, what couch you're going to get for the new apartment. Are you going to get a new car when you get this fabulous new salary you're going to get? Okay, so you have a lot of things to look at, a lot of attributes for every time you make a choice. You're actually doing another cognitive function, which was episode number 7, called comparing. But you're doing some of this when you compare, because you have to have a couple things to look at, or at least look at one thing to see, has it changed as I'm looking at the new version, or is it the same? So what changed? What stayed the same? Is it still a square, or is it something totally new now? And how do you know when something is changing or when it's not?
Wow, that is really amazing.
So there's some good questions. Okay, did you get to see my dog come in?
I saw the door open.
Yeah.
But I did not see anything come in
So
behind you.
I could not conserve the constancy of keeping the door shut because Jack, our standard poodle, takes his nose and pushes the door open. So, oh well. So let me conclude this episode. This was episode number 19, Conserving Constancies, a very important cognitive function, one that Kibwe is going to use a lot when he moves to Denver. And remember, if you would like to start your own podcast, this is the man that you want to contact. So I think your contact info is probably on one of my episodes so they can see how to get a hold of you.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Build a Brain podcast. If you're wanting to know more information on how to build a brain, please visit the website for the MindCAP Center in Fort Wayne, Indiana at www.mind-cap.org. That's www.mind-cap.org. Children and adults from across the United States and Canada have found the cognitive help they needed at the MindCAP Center. The specialized team is trained in all levels of the Feuerstein program and can literally help you or your child build a better brain. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.